مرحبا يا طلاب وأهلا وسهلا مرة ثانية. Today we are continuing our discussion of case and case endings, and this one should be familiar to you. In fact, it should all be a review because all of this is information we covered in 201, but now we're going to put it into, don't skip the video. Okay, anyway, watch this. So we're going to put it into perspective here. Okay, so our goal today is we're talking about the correct case endings for human plurals, and particularly how to recognize them. Now, using them correctly is something that will set your speech apart and will make you sound, appropriate. It's like someone in English who can use case correctly, who knows the difference between whom and who. Put it in that perspective. But being able to recognize it when you see it and know why the case ending is a certain way will save you a lot of confusion, and we're going to show you that, inshallah, in just a moment. As always, we begin with a review here. As you know, many male human plurals end in un or een. For example, muhandisun, which are engineers. Misriyun, almost all nationalities with the exception of Arab end in this. Misriyun, Amrikiyun, Rusiyun, and so forth. Numbers, right? Numbers larger than 20 and up. Khamsun, Thalathun, Thamanun, and so forth. Mudarasun. Okay? And you've also seen these same words with an een ending. Muhandisin, Misriyin, Khamsin, Mudarasin. In fact, everyone that has an un ending has an een ending. You may have wondered why, even though we've covered this in the past. But after this, you should clearly understand why. Now, just one caution before we go on. Notice we said many. Not all human plurals take this ending. It would be great if they did. For example, ustad, the plural of ustad is not ustadun. It's usatida, right? The plural of, for example, tabib, a doctor, is not tabibun. That would be nice, right? It's attiba. So a lot of human plurals do not take this ending. Okay. And we should, okay, so let's just drive on with that. So now we're going to review one other thing which you have seen multiple times. Hopefully you can do this in your sleep, right? Case endings. This is why we asked you to remember this association. Very simple, okay? Subject case, the marfu'a, always goes with the vowel sound u in all its forms. The object with aleph. And the last case, which comes after a preposition or is also the last term in an Idafa, is the E sound. Okay, so now we're going to see another variation. We've seen short vowel, we've seen long vowel, we've seen tanween. Now we're going to see another variation. So this all seems very familiar, right? Absolutely. Okay, so we're just going to apply the rules here, and as you would expect, the un ending with its u sound is used for the subject. So if we're saying muhandisun, then those muhandisun happen to be the subject of whatever sentence we're talking about. We use the een when they are in this case. All right, so if we want to say like with the engineers, ma al muhandisin. Okay. Notice we have a blank here. Now here's the problem. Well, you would say the ending should be an, right? That would make sense, except you probably already know this ending, right? We've seen an used before. What's it used for? That's right, very good answer. It's used for the dual. So the problem is I can't use an as a case ending for an object. I can't say uheb el muhandisan because that means two engineers. And for once, we are going to try to not be confusing, so we're not going to use that. So, believe it or not, we actually have a simple solution. We use een for both cases. Now, you probably want to remember this because this is not the only time we're going to see this happen. It is going to happen in more instances in the future. So just put it this way. So, the bottom line is, unless this thing is the subject of the sentence, it's in. Okay? It's going to be un only when it's the subject of the sentence. And this is why, like when we're introducing the numbers, and sometimes they're introduced as ashrun, thalathun, far more often you're using these. So it's good to get used to in. Okay? So, I know what you're saying. I need to see some examples. I'm a visual person. Well, here you go. Okay, we've tried to make these sentences as similar as we possibly can to highlight the differences. Okay, so let's look at the first sentence. Al-muhandisun yamalun fi asharaka. What's happening here? The engineers are working in the company. Notice it's muhandisun. Why? Because they are the subject of their sentence. They're doing the yamalun. They're doing the work. Certainly not the bosses and the board of directors. They're not doing the work. You know this. Okay, so it's the subject of the sentence. It's un. Here, arif al-muhandisin fi asharaka. I know the engineers in that company. So if you want something done, slip me a few bucks and I can do it, a little bakshish. No, that's a joke here. It's not really a joke some other places. Okay, Arif al-muhandisin fi asharaka. Why muhandisin? Because they are the object of my intense knowing. Notice, it's the same people, right? And this is the only difference. It's just like saying they work in the company, I know them, right? You don't say, I know they and them work. Right? We know it's the same people. It means the same thing, but someone decided, hey, we should use two words for this. That's twice as many flashcards. Okay, great. No, you know why this is, right? This has to do with poetry, with rhyming. And lastly, amal ma al-muhandisin. Why is it in? Again, because it's following the preposition ma. This takes precedence over anything else. If it follows a preposition, boom, it's going to be in. And so, as you can see, you're going to hear this in ending a lot more than you're going to hear this ending. Okay? So, let us look at some examples. One of the Idafa rule. Now, I want to caution you before we go on. There are two Idafa rules that we're going to discuss in this lesson, both of which you have seen before, but just keep them straight. As we said multiple times, right, the second term, or actually the last term in an Idafa, always takes this E case, the majrur case. It's the same case as after a preposition. Okay, so if it is the second part of an idafa, it's always going to be in, even if it is the subject of a sentence, as is this case. Right? Hum asdiqa el muhandisin. They are friends of the engineers. That's why they get to go in the lab and play with all the lasers and stuff like that. It's also why they have no eyes. Okay, anyway. They are the friends of the muhandisin. Well, he's saying that's a subject. Yes, it's a subject, but it is the second term in an idafa, and this case takes precedence over any other case. And just one more little example. Notice asdiqa, plural of sadiq. This is another one where we don't say sadiqun. This is another example of a plural that does not have this type of ending. Okay, so right now you're saying, this is great, thanks so much. I'm going to go out and elab ma kelbi, but there is one wrinkle you have to know. Yes. Now, you've seen this before, but it is very important in this particular instance. In this rule, this is the second idafa rule. Remember, in the first part of an idafa, the first part, the noon gets cut off. What on earth do I mean? Looks like he's in the Fantastic Four, doesn't it? Anyway, okay. Okay, so we want to talk about the company engineers. The engineers of that company, my God, they get worked to death and they get no money and it stinks. Don't go work there. Muhandasun asherika. Now, you could be forgiven in the great afterlife if you were to try and say that, hey, Muhandasun asherika, and feel very proud of yourself. Except you would be slightly wrong. It is Muhandasu asherika. The noon gets cut off. Now, the great thing is it gets cut off in all instances. Doesn't matter what case it is. It's going to be the same thing for the dual as well as the plural. So it's a good rule to know. Muhandasu asherika. Notice the case remains the same. This is why we tell you, remember which vowel goes with which case. So let's look at some examples. Ooh, here are some examples. Again, it looks very similar to our previous examples, except notice a bunch of noons are gone. So Muhandasu asherika. Why? Well, it's u because it's a subject. This should be Muhandasun. If sherika was not in there, it would be al Muhandasun yamalun kathiran. The engineers work a lot. But it's in an Idafa. The engineers of the company work a lot. Okay, same thing applies with the other case. Arif muhandasi asherika. Why is it e? Because it's an object of arif. But again, the noon drops out. I don't arif muhandasin asherika. I arif muhandasi asherika. Okay, and as you would guess, the same thing is going to apply with this case, right? After a preposition. Amal ma muhandasi asherika. But again, remember what I said, there are two Idafa rules. This does not apply to the second term of an Idafa. Okay? It's to what's in the first term. Why is this? Allah yadri. Who knows? It's probably because someone adjudged it easier to say Muhandasu al-Sharika, Muhandasi al-Sharika, run it together rather than Muhandasun al-Sharika. Probably, but it doesn't seem to me that it's all that much easier. Hey, it's the rule, man. You are asking this question, and that's a good question. So let's put this in perspective. This rule is helpful to know when writing and speaking. It's sort of like the proper use of who and whom. It's useful to know. You will certainly sound much more impressive if you know to say Muhandasu asherika, or maybe a more realistic one would be to say teachers of the college, right? Mudarasu jama. Ooh, that will impress people. But I mean, if you say Muhandasun asherika, it's like, you know, right? Someone who doesn't know the difference between who and whom. So it is important to know. I won't say that we'll never test it, but it's not going to be incredibly important. However, it is far more important to recognize this when you're reading it, and I'm going to show you some examples right after this. But it is important to recognize what is happening when you read this. Otherwise, you're going to get confused. Like what? Okay, let's say you really were not solid on your grammar, you didn't pay attention in this class, and so forth, so you really didn't learn your principles very well, and then you're reading and you come across something like this. Amal ma muhandasi asherika. Well, you know what that means because we just went over it. But someone who does not know their grammar is going to look at this. They're going to say, oh, muhandasi. That's my engineer, right? Oh, I know this ending, muhandasi. I work with my engineer, the company. And that's not going to make sense, but they're going to try and guess because they don't really know what they're doing. So, I work with my engineer in the company, even though the word in is not found anywhere in there. And, okay, you say, well, that's one mistake. Well, if you're reading something that is going to have a lot of these in it, you make that mistake, then you make the next one. By the time you get going, you're confused, and you really don't know what's going on. Now, the more important thing, whether you remember to pronounce this and write this correctly, that's nice. But the important thing is that you look at this and you say, oh, muhandasi asherika. Well, what's happened is this is an Idafa. So muhandisiya sharika is the same as muhandisin. It means the same thing as muhandisun. It doesn't mean my, because there's no way this makes sense with this meaning my. I work with the company engineers. The fact that you can recognize this and understand what it means, that is the really important thing. I know what you're saying. Enough talk, let's rock. Okay, so with our secure in the knowledge that our safety is well in hand here, let's look at a few examples. Do not fast forward. You're going to be in big trouble. Okay. Remember, there's a webcam on your computer and it works both ways. Alright, here. Sukuntu fi hadal bait li blank sena. So, I lived in this house for some amount of years. Well, it turns out you lived there a long time. Question is, did you live there for 20 sena or 20 sena? You say neither one. I live in an apartment. No, don't be a wise guy. Okay, it is, yes, it's 20. Why? The main thing is it's coming after this preposition li. For 20 sena. For 20 years. Not for 20 sena. Now, think about it. How are numbers normally used? It's far more common that you're going to be using a number like this as an object of a preposition than as a subject of a sentence, right? So this is why it's far more common to hear 20 than 20. Okay, great. Hopefully you're 1 for 1 right now. Alright, let's look at this one. Blank هذه الشركة يعملون 3 أيام في الأسبوع فقط. هذا الشركة جيد جدا. أريد أن أعمل هناك. Okay, so the blanks, and you thought they were going to be muhandisun again, didn't you? This time we have muwaddafun, the employees. The employees in that company work only 3 days of the week. Okay, great. Now the question is, what are they? Muwaddafun, muwaddafu, muwaddafin, muwaddafi. Okay, think about it for a minute. Okay, have you got the correct answer? None of the above? No, okay, it's muwaddafu. Now, isn't that cool the way we faded these out? That is worth the price of admission, isn't it? Okay, why muwaddafu? Okay, first of all, they are what? They are the subject. This is the subject of the sentence. They are the people doing the yamalun. Okay, so these two are completely out. It's not going to be muwaddafin. They're not an object. Now, why muwaddafu? Because it's the first term in an Idafa. Now look at this. Hadahi doesn't matter. What are they? The employees of this company. And remember, anything that you can say that way. The University of Cairo. Right? The friend of the student. The employees of this company. Anything that you can say that way is an Idafa. So this is muwaddafu hadhi sharika. Now it's very important that you recognize that this means the same as that. Right? Great. Feeling good? I know it. Okay, so hopefully you're 2 for 2. Okay. Here we have another one. أفهم الأردنيون جيدا لكني لا أفهم. Oh boy, I get in trouble on this one, huh? Okay, I understand Jordanians very well. They speak slowly and clearly. Walakin I don't understand. Who don't I understand? Al-Misriyun, Al-Misriyu, Al-Misri'i, Al-Misri'in. Think about it. Think about it. You thinking? Huh? What is it? What is it? It is, yeah, of course, it's Al-Misri'in. Why? Because they're the object. I don't understand. They are the object of my not understanding. Okay, so is out. Don't be fooled. Is this in an Idafa? No, it's by itself, right? And it's definitely the last term. So it's al-Misri'in. And just a side note, notice it doesn't matter whether this is definite or indefinite. If I said like I don't understand some Misri'in, right? it wouldn't make a difference. So don't worry about that. Okay, so you may say, hey, this is a little confusing. Is there any good news? One thing we do know is everybody loves the feminine plural, right? Plurals in Arabic, they could get a bit crazy, but we always love the at ending. Why? Because it never changes. It's at for everything, right? And it's the same thing here. No matter what case this is in, it's going to be at. Muhandisat al-Sharika, they could be Muhandisat al-Misriyat, whatever. Arif al-Muhandisat, Arif al-Muwadafat, Arif al-Misriyat. It doesn't matter. It never changes. Depending on the case, doesn't matter. Definite, indefinite, doesn't change. Nothing drops off. And this is why everybody loves the feminine plural so much. Okay, now why don't we do that for all the plurals? Well, I don't know that. But I do know that my good friend Smidgen here wishes you all the best in your study of Arabic. So thank you so much. Wa ma salama.